Welcome, my non-binary folk, transgenders, attack helicopters, all the fucking genders we have now, all 860 of them. We got this beautiful woman here.
Hi.
Now you have to talk. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, what do you want me to say?
I want to talk about your art.
My art.
Yes, you're covered in tattoos.
Yeah, I am.
And you said you've always done art, not tattoos.
I started drawing when I was about 6. My mom taught me how to draw like a dog. She would take a little oval like this and do big hump, little hump, big hump, and then draw a circle around it and do the dog that way. So that's the beginning of how I learned how to do art, and then
just to progress from there.
Yeah, I started to really get into like drawing skulls and stuff. That's when I realized I had a goth aesthetic, is because I was really into like the dark, gory stuff. And then when I turned 18 is when I got my first tattoo, and I was like watching him do it because it was my mom's friend. I was watching him do the tattoo, and then I was just thinking to myself, damn, I could actually do art that lives forever. And so I just got the idea of like, oh, I want to get a tattoo gun and learn how to do it.
How do you look at them? Do you look at them as like a canvas that is going to be there even after you're dead?
I look at it as a way to do self-expression. Because there's that whole theory that a lot of like older generations are like, oh, you shouldn't get a tattoo unless it means something. But if you think about even their generation, there's people who say it and they have like a giant flower all over their arm, and I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, it's my favorite flower.
I think they just don't know how to deal with regret, because they're like, you're gonna regret this tattoo. Well, how about you just don't regret the fucking tattoo? It's a part of your life. You don't have to fucking regret it.
When my skin is old and wrinkly, I'm gonna be playing with them like shriveling them up and being like, look, it can talk now.
You think that we fantasize like gory shit because it's like a way to deal with death? Because our brains, even in the back, if you're ready to die, there's always that part that's like, the body's gonna be gone.
I think like the whole sense of like horror movies and stuff, I think, yeah, it's a form of like a coping mechanism. Like knowing one day that anything can kill you at any moment, and we're just like exaggerating it, so in the back of my mind, in the back of your mind, it just feels a lot better in a sense.
I think the clock starts as soon as you're born. Even before that, because people fucking eat the baby out the window before it's even out the womb.
It definitely does. There's a horror movie, I think it's called Countdown, where it shows you how long you have left to live. And it definitely does start as soon as you're born, but everybody has a different amount of time.
It's weird because you could be gone tomorrow. That's why I live the way that I do. People get mad at me for it, but it's like, shit, I might die tomorrow.
I would rather die happy, knowing that I enjoyed my life, rather than trying to
play with the fucking societal expectations. It's bullshit.
Like, oh, you need to get a good job so you can retire someday. Like, oh, what if I want to keep working until I'm 80?
Retirement's a joke. That's the thing. Most people go back into fucking regular jobs, like they retire and then they'll go get a Walmart job or some shit. And even if our retirement was set up to where it was all right, it's only been around for like, I don't even know how long. It's not that long. Probably, I'd say a human lifetime at most. There was no retirement before Social Security, and now they're starting to play with the money in there, so it's starting to fuck up Social Security. So we're probably not going to be able to retire even if we wanted to.
The chances of our generation being able to retire, especially since they refuse to raise the minimum wage gap to be acceptable for living, is just not gonna happen the way they want it to.
I don't know if it's necessarily minimum wage, because I talked to the older guys at Winnebago, and when they started, they were making $7 to do what I do now. I make, fucking 13, 14, almost $15 more than they did when they started. And I think it's because the government's spending so much damn money. They just fucking, everything went up. And now it seems like we don't have the right amount of money, but if they stopped spending and made the inflation go back down, I feel like it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, that is true. We are going through like a small recession, but at the same time, when they were making like $7 an hour to do what you do, their price of living was hella low.
That's what I mean. Like, the inflation rate was down a hell of fucking lot more than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we did raise the minimum wages, then we'd have to worry about where's that money coming from. It's coming from our tax dollars, so they take more taxes. It'd probably equal out just to where we are now. I never thought about it before now, but I feel like it would just equal back out because things would have to go up in price to be able to pay for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You never know what's gonna happen.
Another recession was really crazy after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you went from like $2-something per gallon of gas to seeing some places go up to like $15-$20, like California and stuff like that. That was insane, and it's just now starting to drop down, but at the same time, it's still the most expensive we've ever seen it, still, even to this day.
California is the most fucked because they've got a homeless problem that they don't know how to solve and all kinds of other bullshit. The government's kind of like the fucking mafia. They just take money from people.
The pandemic really fucked us.
I listen to an economist, and he like predicts a lot of shit before it even happens, and he was talking about how we're headed for a recession, and they're trying to say we're not in a recession right now, but the definition of a recession is like what we're in. I couldn't recite the definition off the top of my head, but they're saying they try to change definitions of words like equity and bullshit like that.
I think the government does it because if you look back in history, a lot of the times that we did go through like a recession or stuff like that, at the time that it was happening, they told them that it wasn't, so that the world wouldn't freak out, like their people wouldn't freak out and cause hiatus. But I think that's the same thing that they're doing now, and it's going to be written in future history books, is like, oh, right now we don't think we're in a recession because they want us to maintain a level head and continue to go to work and act like everything's fine, but like 20 years from now it might be another fucking thing down the line where in history books they're going to be like, oh yeah, 2023 recession, and it's like, you told us we weren't.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The whole reason we're in this problem now is because of the 2008 financial crisis. They bailed out the banks, and instead of letting them fail, like a free market, you fucking let the banks fail, and they rebuild themselves back up, and then by now, the banks would be in a fucking normal position, but because we unnaturally inflated our economy by bailing them out, it just created a big bubble, and it's popping now. That's why so many banks are failing.
Well, even to this day, like October last year, I believe it was October last year, I could be wrong, but you remember the whole IRS thing where we had to conjure up the money to pay them off so that we could continue to have our government running?
I don't. I remember them hiring more people that, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I just didn't hear about that, but I remember them hiring more people that could like have weapons and shit on them to collect money. So I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled some shit like that.
Allegedly, it's still going on, and they're gonna be voting on it again because they've been postponing it, I guess.
Is it a bill?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say a bill. So basically, you remember all those loans that we took out during the pandemic to pay for this, that, and the third. The IRS, I don't want to put it in a sense of like they went bankrupt, but like we owe the IRS a lot of money, and it's due to like all of the loans we've been taking out, all of the stuff that we've been putting in all of the wrong places and stuff like that. Well, October, we were supposed to meet a deadline to pay them. The government was supposed to meet a deadline to pay them the money that we owed them. and we couldn't meet that deadline, so they asked for, like, in a sense, like an amendment, like a prolonged period.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought it back up, I want to say January, February, and then we needed another, amendment. And so I'm not sure if they got that all figured out or if it's still going up until June, but basically the government is meeting its own hiatus, and if they can't pay the IRS, that'd be a government shutdown, because the IRS pays for us to get our trash dumped, pays the mailman, it pays for, like, everything that we see in our day-to-day lives, and if we don't pay that, it's going to be an economic shutdown on top of our current recession.
That's where our taxes are supposed to go. They're supposed to go to fucking repairing the streets and all this other shit, but most of it just goes into people's pockets.
It doesn't help that the construction companies, I mean, by all means, make your dollar and spend as much time as you can trying to meet, your quota, but if you ever go down the street and you actually see the people on site working on the potholes and stuff like that, they're taking weeks, months to fill one small hole.
It's really because they don't give a fuck. I mean, sure, it's their roads too, but they're just here. They're just trying to get a paycheck. That's most people's problem. They don't fucking care about what they're doing.
Yeah. That's why I said, like, I'm not against them trying to make as much money as they can, but at the same time, like, you have 50 projects, and I'm not saying they're not working on it, but I can't really see the reason why, if you have 50 projects, why it's taking you so long to cover up something this big.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I did construction, but I never did concrete construction, so I don't...
It's not too hard.
Yeah.
I've done it with my dad. You just fucking mix the shit and pour it.
Yeah.
And then you just keep them off for a day or two, and it'll dry.
That's why I was saying, like, I don't want to speak ill on them, because I don't know the effort that they have to go through, because they might be repairing pipes and stuff like that underneath.
We don't know what kind of job it is, but by the looks of it, it looks like they're fucking around most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's what the government does, too. They fucking make shit take as long as possible to milk the fucking money, like the Ukraine war. And then they treat us like we're fucking retarded. I think they treat all their citizens like we're stupid and we can't adult ourselves.
Goes back to America being a third world country with a Gucci belt.
Yeah, it is.
It really acts like it.
We act like we're hot shit, but we're just like any other country.
Because, like, one of my favorite things when I was speaking to the people that I met overseas is Americans make fun of the Europeans because of their bad dental. Well, their bad dental comes from their genetic makeup. But if you really look at it, America gets a lot of worse dental problems, because theirs is like the overgrown teeth, how they have the one that's popped out from all the rest of them, and that they're not as strong as ours are. Well, if you look at it, America has a lot of processed foods, sugars, and salts and stuff like that, so we're more prone to cavities, chipping, and, having to get crowns, caps, the works. So technically, we have worse dental issues than they do, allegedly. But our dental is up, like, price-wise and work-wise than theirs is.
That's how a lot of things are. If I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not saying I am, it looks like it's all fucking set up to just harvest the money from everybody. Like, there's some drugs that you can get in, like, Canada and the UK for, like, $300, and then over here it's, like, 30 grand. They upcharge like a motherfucker in America. And, like, all of our systems are set up like that. Instead of doctors, doctors don't learn shit about nutrition or supplements or vitamins, and then they fucking try to throw pills at everything just because it's profit. They're making money.
That's one of the things that I was also discussing with some of my overseas friends is, so when you get, like, any kind of, like, small surgery, they're so quick to give you things like morphine, oxy, hydros, stuff like that, like the big name, really mess you up medication. But over there, they'll just knock you out with gas. And they'll just be like, go deal with it.
Yeah, because nobody knows how to deal with pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcast we listened to the other day, it seems like those medications make the pain worse.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, heroin itself isn't bad. I've listened to a doctor that fucking uses it recreationally, like most people smoke weed, but he doesn't use it as much as people smoke weed. A lot of people abuse weed, but he uses it recreationally, but it's pure Afghani heroin. And what we get from these fucking pharmaceutical companies is mostly a sedative. That's why people OD on it so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Or they get it from the street and it's mixed with fentanyl or other bullshit. They put so much, they cut shit with so much. That's why the war on drugs doesn't make any fucking sense. Because if they really cared about their citizens, they'd fucking regulate it and they'd fucking give it out in prescriptions like they do everything else.
And even here's like a food for thought topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So meth, crack, heroin, coke, really hard substances to kick, really easy to get addicted to just one time. Cigarettes, sold in the market, every store you go to, it's there. It's available, you can buy it straight up. There is proof that smoking cigarettes is harder to kick than heroin, harder to kick than meth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so easy to get addicted after your first cigarette, and your urges for it again, like, what is it called? When you're trying to go cold turkey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Your withdrawal hits a lot harder and has a bigger impact on your body. Not even just, like, your emotional state where you're like, oh, I need to smoke. It even takes a toll on your body because there's been people who have, like, stopped smoking cigarettes and immediately started noticing, like a cancer lump or something like that, because your body becomes so dependent on it. When you take it away, especially at such a rapid pace, like some people go cold turkey, it'll really mess you up.
Mm-hmm.
And those withdrawals on its own is hiatus, but it will never compare to, like, just street drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Because street drugs, you can still kick it and, like, go on about your day. You might mess up your teeth or something, but nowhere near as bad.
Well, the problem isn't the substances themselves, it's the chemicals we put in these substances, because nicotine wasn't as addictive as it is now, and same with cocaine, opium. There's still indigenous cultures that use opium and cocaine, and even meth was a plant originally, but we fucking mess with it in the lab and put chemicals in it and do a bunch of bullshit to it.
We call it pharmaceutical medication.
Not just that, but the powdered cocaine is made from, like, gasoline and all kinds of fucking toxic chemicals that could fucking really fuck you up.
They have coolant in cigarette filters.
And that doesn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
They probably do make it more addictive for this fact that more people will use it and it's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't work. Like, they tried it in the 30s with prohibition of alcohol, and the same thing happened. People were making bootleg liquor and all kinds of shit, and plenty of people died off the fucking liquor that wasn't regulated.
Isn't that around the time that we came up with the idea of moonshine?
Mm-hmm.
I thought so.
That's where NASCAR came from, too, because the moonshiners were souping up their cars to get away from the cops.
Left turn. Another left turn. My favorite part about NASCAR is always the left turns.
I don't know. I think that they should be educating us about this shit.
No, they really
Just
should.
saying no and fucking trying to just say drugs are bad, and then giving us all these pharmaceuticals like Xanax and Oxycontin and fucking all this bullshit that they give us. ADHD medication. I think kids need to be taught about this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Teach the benefits and the risks. That's the problem. People want to look at everything like it's simple and like, oh, this is good for you, this is bad for you. No, it's a risk and there's benefits. This thing has more risk than benefit, then don't fuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Because, like, a couple of years before I started at our school, the high school here in town, we had, not sex ed, but it was, like, the family-oriented stuff, where they would teach you how to sew,
How to fuck
cook.
your family?
No! But they would teach you things like how to sew, how to like, cook. They would teach you things like sex ed and stuff like that. And it's like, these are important things that we need to know. You could include other important things like taxes, or, you know, if like drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had people come in and it was like the dots, the drugs, and they would come in and tell you the like why drugs are so bad, but they wouldn't tell you like, okay, here's the drug, here's the pros and cons, and here's why we don't want you to do it.
That's the problem. They fucking just say it's bad. They're biased as fuck because they don't tell you there's benefit to using these substances as well. And if you are in a fucking rut and stuck in your head, you're not gonna fucking just say no. You're gonna find something to deal with that fucking depression or whatever it is. Especially kids, they don't know any better and they're not being taught any better, so they just fucking go and find whatever's good. They're too impulsive to make that kind of decision to just say no. Especially under peer pressure. Getting your fucking friends like, oh, it's just weed, dude, do it. And that's how you fucking start smoking weed. And if you don't know how to control yourself, then you're addicted to weed.
You can get lost in the escape.
Exactly. Not fucking, what's it called? Chemically addicted, but physically dependent on it. I've been addicted myself to fucking weed. I mean, it's not that my brain needs it like nicotine, but it's that I need it to eat or sleep because I've been using it for so long that I can't do these normal processes anymore.
It just sucks that they stripped away all of those things from school, because it's like, even if they weren't teaching us in the best way possible, we were at least learning. And one of the things that, like, a lot of kids, when you're young and you hear something like, oh, taxes, and then you go to the class and they just give you like this mediocre, fake, you know, whatever description of taxes, then you're gonna go home, you're gonna ask your family, you're gonna do the research. Like, even if they weren't teaching us to the best of their ability those things, they still could have kept it in the schooling system, because that would have at least put it in kids' brains like, oh, I need to know more. Because kids are curious creatures. They're going to want to know more.
Kids want to learn if you give them the information. And not just the information, but you give them the tools to know how to find the information.
Because it's like, I could go up to a kid and be like, global climate change, walk off, and then they're going to go to their family and be like, oh my God, what is global climate change?
Or they're going to be or they're going to be like, this person's fucking insane, Dad. I don't know what the fuck this person's on about.
Yeah, all they said was global climate change. Well, son, actually, let me give you some knowledge about that.
That's the problem with the school system. It's not that it's all bad and it needs to just completely torn down, and the same goes for the government and the pharmaceutical companies. The same goes for most of our structures in society. It's not that it's all terrible, because pharmaceuticals and modern medicine has done a lot to help people, and you just fucking died before. But it needs to be reformed. People get stuck in their ways, and most of the time it doesn't change until the fucking old people in it die, and then it's like new people go in and they have new ideas. But they need to figure out how to fucking not get stuck in their ways of thinking, because some of the fucking doctors and scientists I listen to, they talk about how as soon as you're out of medical school, all the shit you learned is already old and expired. You need to keep learning. But most people stop learning. They're like, oh, I got my PhD and I'm a fucking genius now.
It doesn't help that a lot of adults raise their kids to do what they do. So, like, if you were a dentist and your kid is growing up and you push on them to be a dentist and push on them to do the practice, it's the same thing with, like, the government. Like, I feel like a lot of the reason why we haven't seen a lot of change, we've seen like minor changes here and there throughout history, obviously, and there's been big impacts and small impacts, but I think one of the biggest problems is these adults, they're having kids and then teaching them what they know and go, if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. Like, and a lot of the kids will just accept that because they're too young to know, like, oh, I can have my own ideas. I have my own brain. Like,
kids look at their parents with a God complex. They give them food, water, everything they need. And then that's why people get so resentful of their parents and start to hate them, because they're like, well, you failed me. You didn't do what you were supposed to do. But once you get old enough, you realize they're just humans like everybody else. They're not these fucking all perfect knowing creatures that'll give you everything you need.
Yeah, and kids also have like a high attachment and abandonment issue where you could still be their parent, give them all of the love and affection that you can, but if there's somebody that treats your kid better, they're gonna attach to that person a lot more. And I think it's a scary aspect in some sense, but also like a nice kind of situation, because it's like yeah, I could walk you through life to the best of my ability, not push these things on you, and then give you all the resources that you need. But if somebody came up and started spoiling my kid with like money and buying them everything that they wanted and stuff like that, all of a sudden the world's gonna look at me like I'm a bad parent because my kid got attached to somebody who's treating them better.
See, and I don't know if I agree with that for sure, but I don't know if it's necessarily, it can go either way. It's like they're spoiling them with all that nonsense, then yeah, that's not good for their brains because they think, oh, this person's just gonna give me everything. But if they're spoiling them with knowledge and ways of being that are not like their parents, but they see that it's a better way to live because they're happier and they're more at peace, then of course the kid's going to attach to that because they don't want to be miserable, and kids are naturally loving and naturally at peace. They don't have all the bullshit in their heads like we have. And that's why as you grow older you start to resent the world, or you figure it out that you're like, oh, it's just different. It's not that it's fucking terrible, it's just there's more information now and I know what's going on. That's why they say ignorance is bliss, because kids just don't have that information.
That's why it could go either for better or worse, because it's like you could spoil the kid in all of the wrong ways or spoil it in all of the right ways. Like, a lot of people make the joke like, oh, I'm gonna be the cool drunk aunt, and it's like, okay, go ahead and do that, but like, you know, maintain yourself. And then there's also the other people that are just like, oh, I'm gonna spoil your kid and be the rich grandma, or like if you have somebody with a PhD, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna be the one that teaches them what they need to know in life and stuff like that. And it's like, you have so many different ways of having your child grow up and attach to any one of those three, and it could go for better or worse.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you gotta have the discipline to not overindulge and give them too much, like, and especially with substances. It's fine to have a drink or two around a kid. It's not gonna fuck them up. But if you're drinking every day and you're getting fucked up to the point where you can't even give the kid the time of day, then that's gonna be fucked up for them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's too easy to traumatize a child.
I don't like the fact that society is like, oh, once you have a kid, you can't have a drink at all, or DHS is gonna come after you. And it's like, you can still indulge safely around minors versus going above and beyond and traumatizing the damn kid. Like, it's rough, but at the same time, it's the same thing with society just saying everything you do and say is wrong. Like, it used to be like when you would be in trouble, you would be innocent until proven guilty. And that's how it was for a lot of our older generation. But in this generation that we know now, it's you're guilty until proven innocent. They'll lock you up without any proof and just be like, well, you're our main suspect. And then, like, there's so many people our age and even, like, 30s, 40s that have been locked up for something that they weren't even near and never even heard about. But they themselves cannot prove that they weren't there. They can't prove that they didn't commit the crime or whatever they got locked up for. And I think it's ridiculous. And, like, DHS does it, our government does it, our police does it. Like, anything that you do, they just look at you funny until you can prove to them why.
I'm glad you're using non-gender specific pronouns like they and them. I'm just kidding. But I think a lot of that, even if they did know the crime, our fucking laws are set up fucked up, like with weed. Weed makes you love kids more, makes you happier to be around them, makes you more patient, makes you there's no reason it should still be illegal, but they fucking do it because they make so much money off of it being illegal. And they fucking, it's been proven that the CIA has knowingly and willingly smuggled drugs across the border, and they smuggle guns across the border. Our government's profiting off this shit. That's the only reason it hasn't been legalized yet.
Oh, that kind of makes me think about yesterday. Can I bring up yesterday?
I don't care.
I'm not gonna give any, like, descriptive details, but, like, no specific person, no nothing like that.
She grabbed my balls.
Maybe. But like the whole gun law fiasco that we were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's such a big line that America especially has on like gun rights and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
where you could call the police station and be like, hey, this person said, you know, in a very cryptic way that they're gonna commit the die,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they'll just be like, okay, well, we can do a welfare check. Go and do a welfare check, come back and be like, well, we have no grounds to do anything about it because they seemed fine.
Mm-hmm.
They were just being very vague, but they said they didn't want the help and that they weren't going to harm themselves or others. And then, you know, you're talking to them and you're like, okay, well, what if what if there's pills? Like, let's say allegedly the person has, like, a bag full of pills that, like, it's medically prescribed, but they have enough of them to OD, or, you know, they have a gun on them, or anything like that, and they'll just be like, well, did they say that they were gonna shoot anybody? And it's like, well, no, but they said that they have the gun, and they'll just sit there and be like, well, if they didn't threaten to harm themselves or others, then there's not really much we can do about it until 24 hours from now. And I think it's stupid because it's like, I do and do not care about our gun rights. I think it's perfectly acceptable for people to own guns because, like, it is people who fire off the gun and cause harm to others with the gun. And then there's also the aspect of I could put it in my pocket with my safety off and accidentally get knocked in the leg. So is it the guns or is it the people? It's a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really is. But I think there's such a big line there where it's like, if you have proof that somebody could harm themselves or others and they have 10 different ways to do it, pills, gun, you know, drugs, whatever, that they still won't cross that boundary because of our rights. And it's like, that's acceptable, but if you have to wait 24 hours, somebody's already going to be hurt by then.
Mm-hmm. See, it's like we were talking about, 99% of the time it's going to work out and it's going to be fine, but that 1% of the time you can't take it back. And I think that the original use for the Second Amendment was to protect ourselves against the government so they didn't become all too powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that people have the right to own their guns, but then they need to be educated because now people can just get guns without even fucking going through a class or learning how to operate the thing.
You don't even have to get a license anymore. You can walk into a Walmart and just be like, yeah, I like that one.
And not just that, even if we were to have a revolution against the government, there is no way. Well, you see, I'm conflicted because I feel like if we were to have a war with the government, we either would be successful. Well, I mean, obviously we'd be successful or we wouldn't be. And I think it could go either way because if the military is just made of civilians like we are, I doubt that they would go and kill their neighbors and their family and people that they live with in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. But then again, the government controls a lot, so I don't know what would happen. But even if we were to start a revolution or some shit, they have fucking nukes and all kinds of shit a gun cannot fucking fight against.
Mm-hmm.
Like tanks and shit. There's no way a gun can fight against that.
Mm-mm.
But then the problem is not that the gun themselves. It's that we have. Joe Rogan says this all the time. We have a mental issue or a mental health issue. It's not a gun issue, because people who get their guns legally and take their classes and get their licenses and shit, they treat their guns with respect and they treat it like you're supposed to. They're safe with it. They keep it away from their kids and all this other shit. But the most gun violence comes from people getting their guns illegally. And like school shootings, they get it. Maybe they buy it legally, but they don't get a background check, or even if they do, maybe they're this 18-year-old kid that doesn't have a background of violence or something like that. But fuck, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Oh yes, if we were to make the guns completely illegal like the Democrats keep trying to do, it's just gonna take the guns away from people who got them legally. It's not going to take the guns away from people who already have them legally and don't care about it, legal or not legal.
Yeah.
It's like drugs. People don't give a fuck if they're legal or not. They still get them.
People are going to get their hands on something that they want to do regardless of who it's going to harm. Even if it is themselves, they're going to obtain it regardless of where they find it and how they find it. But, like, I don't know. America walks on such a thin line where it's like, you know, gun rights. Or, like when Trump was president. We, as the whole world, know it's in our amendment that the citizens can overthrow our government at any time. It just has to be, like, a mutual, like, not everybody has to agree, but it has to be, like, a majority rules type thing. Nobody did that, though. The government just got sick of them and just said, oh, we're going to impede it. We're going to push you out of office anyway. And... like, even when it comes to, like, the Senate, you know, you could easily push them out, but majority rules, and nobody will come together and just be like, oh, yeah, let's go, because even though that it's in our amendment and the government says we can do it, the moment we try, they're like, oh, they're rioting. Oh, they're doing bad.
Not only that, the reason they keep us so divided with gender politics and during COVID, who wears a mask and who's fucking vaccinated and all this stupid shit that they have us arguing about all the time and hating each other over. That's how they keep us from revolting. We fucking are so divided and we think we hate this other person. But everybody has more similarities than differences. It's just people get caught in their head. They think that, oh, I don't like this person because of this. But maybe they don't like you because of something you do. But I guarantee you, you're both human, and you both fucking were raised in some kind of household, probably traumatized in some way. There's probably more similarities between people than differences.
One of my favorite quotes is, regardless of who you are and what you look like, everybody bleeds the same blood. But anytime there's hiatus in the government especially, they'll just feed us some kind of major crisis so that we just turn away from what our original plan was. I think it's so dumb because, like, yeah, we have the right to overthrow them. Are we going to? We can't. They're not going to allow that. Yeah, we can keep having a debate about guns. Is it going to ever get rid of them? No. Never.
There's more guns than people in this country. There's no getting rid of guns at this point.
We have the biggest military, like, ever. We kind of have to have the guns and the resources for that.
Not just that, you can 3D print guns now. Like,
yeah.
All you need is code and, and a 3D printer, and you can print that shit off real quick. There's an episode of Trafficked that I watched, and the ghost guns are getting insane. They don't have any VIN or serial numbers or anything. They just fucking get printed and they're ready to go. You just put the parts together, and because they sell the parts separately, and some of them are 3D printed, they're not technically classified as a gun. There's no getting rid of this shit.
You could 3D print a high impact rifle, one that'll just blow straight through you like a shotgun. And it's like more advanced than the guns that we can make to this day, but we can't do anything about it because it's not a gun. It's considered like a Nerf.
Even if they did make it illegal, there's fucking police officers, and I'm not saying all of them are bad, but there's fucking police officers and government officials and all kinds of other people selling illegal guns to the cartel and all kinds of shit. That's just more profit for them. And I guarantee more guns would be around if we made them illegal.
That's one of the things that we were talking about earlier. That's also a thin line to walk. We can commit citizens arrest, but are they ever going to listen?
Especially cops. Cops, a lot of them are good and their jobs are very hard. They have to worry about a lot, but a lot of them also are bad because they're not trained enough. That's why the whole defund the police movement was fucking stupid, because they need more money for better training and all this shit. And they get this fucking God complex, like they're untouchable. That's the problem. They think that, oh, I'm above the law, but you're supposed to enforce the law. You're not. You're just the same as everybody else.
Not only that, there's quite a few of them that let their emotions run their job. Because, like, one of the biggest things that you learn growing up is you can't take your outside beliefs, situations, and stuff like that into your work environment. Because when you go to work, it's strictly what you know about work. But a lot of police officers will take their outside stuff and bring it into their job and be like, oh my god, pa 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 pa.
And that's why they need better training, because they need to learn how to control their emotions, and they need better training with their weapons so that they're not drawing them on fucking random people and shit like they've done in the past. On top of that, there's been so many fucking, before I say that, they need to be physically fit. If you're gonna be an officer, you need to fucking be in shape, and you need to work out and fucking take care of your body. There's so many fat officers that if you just run away, they're not gonna be able to catch you.
Damn those free donuts.
And on top of that, they need to know like some kind of martial art, because if they don't have a weapon on them, they still need to be able to apprehend a suspect, and they need to be able to take them down to the fucking ground. If a fucking person knows how to take somebody down better than the police officer, then they fucking get tackled, and fucking, that's how police officers get killed. They can't fucking defend themselves.
A lot of them need to learn to go to like martial arts, jiu-jitsu, or even just karate classes, so that if they don't have their weapon, or because a lot of officers will treat any situation, even just getting pulled over for having, you know, high window tint where it's like too dark to see in your car, they'll come out with their gun because they're like, I could get shot at any minute. But it's like, there's still quite a few of them that are pretty chilled out and leave their weapon like in their vehicle when they commit to like a traffic stop or any minor violation. But it's like, you know, I can understand being worried being in that kind of environment. You're looked at like you're a terrible person because you're the law. I get that. A lot of people might draw a weapon on you even if you are weaponless. But it's like, you should be able to leave your gun in the car and still know you can defend yourself, you know, against any person, but also not go up to the people like they're going to already beat your ass. Like,
I gotta pause this and take a piss.
Okay.
I gotta go bad. The problem with, what's that?
Oh, I was gonna say, if not, I do have my laptop, so we can mash them together.
Yeah, I tried that on my laptop. That's why I started using the phone, because the laptop's my laptop at least is pretty fucking shit. I bought it cheap as fuck, and I probably shouldn't have. But I got a nice ass mic for it that I can't use. But I used to, as a younger person, I'm still a child, but as a younger person, I used to look at all police officers as bad. And I have my own biases against the Mason City Police Department, but I don't think we can look at them as bad, regardless if they're bad officers or not. They're just trying to enforce the law. They're doing their job like everybody else is doing their job. And if you are a fucking criminal, and you are out there committing crime, you should be the last one to fucking look at the police officers as bad, because you're doing something wrong.
Oh, absolutely. You're the one that's actually provoking them to instigate a situation like that. It's like when we were having the BLM movement, a lot of officers. Okay, we started the protest got started for all of the right reasons. Okay. But a lot of officers that were forced to go out and stop those protests, because you got to remember, in some states there were SWAT, in some states they had the whole FBI going.
They almost had martial law enforced on Minneapolis.
But a lot of officers got a lot of bad credit because they were forced to participate in manhandling people off of the street, and it's like we can't really blame them. Like it's really shit. Because we started those peaceful protests to go and try and make a movement heard. But at the same time, like, some places did kind of take it out of control, where it did lead up into actual riots. But in other places where people were just walking, you know, the officers had to take initiative because of the other places that were rioting, because it was getting so out of control. And a lot of them got a bad rep because, you know, understandably, in the places that were rioting, they had to be aggressive. They had to get on people's ass. But on places that were peaceful protesting, they still were mandated to manhandle people just so that it wouldn't go out of control like the other places, and they got such shit credit for that.
And that goes back to the gun shit, because that does make us safer as a country when shit like that does happen, because during COVID, during riots and shit in like Australia and China, they forced people to just do whatever the government wanted them to do. They don't have the guns like we do to fucking fight back. And I think even if our government is trying to take power all the time and the police get these hotheads thinking they're hot shit, they know damn well we can have a gun on us if we needed to as Americans. And that's why they have to walk around us carefully. If we were in another country where we didn't have the firearms, they would probably just treat us like we were nothing.
Like, there was even the protests over the Roe v. Wade where some places also got manhandled even when it was being peaceful. Like, it's just, I think it's a matter of not just the police being forced to do what they are, like, told to do, but also a matter of how the citizens take it into their hands, like, how they treat a situation like that. Because it's like, if we're all peacefully walking to protest something, to make a movement, take a stand for whatever the situation may be, we're going at it in the right way. Are the government going to do anything about it is the question, but we're still handling it peacefully. But the moment people start breaking out and rioting, it's all of a sudden, fuck the police, they're such shitheads, all this other, like, shitty things on their behalf, and it's like, these officers are trying to keep us from destroying cities because we're mad. But if we're peacefully walking, they'll stand and walk with us. They'll do what they can to try to keep it peaceful from other officers even.
That's what was weird during the BLM riots too, was not only were they burning down black businesses, and that whole fucking corporation itself took a lot of money from people and used it for their own benefit. But even the news companies and shit were trying to go along with, oh, this is a peaceful protest, when there was fires burning in the back and shit.
Yeah, because that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where if there's something really bad going on, the government's going to feed us something else so that we're not freaking out. Because it's like, I'm not going to say specifically who, but a relative of mine went to a peaceful protest. They were just walking and stuff. And it was one of those situations during the BLM movement where nobody was starting to riot at all. But the police officers got called in because people were, like, screaming. Nobody was yelling, nobody was running around trying to, like, burn shit down or anything like that, but people started yelling. So I think it was Des Moines, but basically the county got really, like, pressed because they're like, oh, this could turn into a riot. All the officers need to be there on standby just in case, and all this other stuff. And my relative was just there, like, went to go on the sidewalk and take pictures. They weren't walking with the people. They weren't doing anything like that. They were just taking pictures to, like, I guess, document the whole situation. And one of the officers manhandled them, like, ripped their shirt into pieces and, like, threw them in the jail cell. And I think that's stupid, as even as a bystander in a protest that you're not even participating in. You know, it's the shit like that where the officers get bad credit, because it's like anybody and everybody in that situation needs to be taken out of that situation because they're worried that it is going to blow up into a riot, but they're also attacking the wrong people, which is why they get such a shit, like, reputation.
And that also goes back to what we were talking about with the suicide shit. They really can't fucking say it's going to turn into anything until it does. I mean, maybe it looks like it's going to turn violent and then it turns even more peaceful than it was before. There's no fucking way to predict what's going to happen unless you see telltale signs, like, oh, they're blowing shit up and they're burning shit to the ground, and that's when they know. But they can't just jump to conclusions, especially as officers, because they got to keep that shit under control. And if they're the reason it's going out of control, then that's an even bigger problem than if it were to go out of control by itself.
The government, and especially our police departments everywhere across the nation, it's such a gamble, because it's like, they can't do anything about suicide until somebody's dead. They can't do anything about mass murder until somebody's dead. Like, they have to have a clause to be able to actually do something about it. And it's like, I could give you screenshots, voice recording, and pictures of the fact that this person texted they were going to end it all, voice recorded that, they have a gun, and a picture of their gun in the back seat. And then the officer's just going to sit there and be like, well, can't do anything about it. And it's like,
unless they're making direct threats.
Yeah.
That's the reason I had a mental evaluation in high school, is because I made a direct threat. But if I were to just say somebody should shoot up Target, and not just I'm gonna shoot up Target, which obviously I was joking, but it was a direct threat, and so they're like, oh, we need to do an evaluation on this fucker, make sure he's not doing something.
Yeah, but a lot of officers get to situations like that before it's like after it's too late. They can't get to it before because our rights as citizens are preventing them to be able to do anything about it.
We need Neuralink. Elon needs to hurry that shit up. If we read each other's minds, there's no bullshit no more. We know people's intention. We know what their fucking plans are. We know what they're thinking.
Everybody's gonna go into a fucking insane asylum day one because you're gonna hear so many thoughts of just, damn, I want to kill myself today.
I want to kill that person. I want to kill myself, and I want to go and fucking rob this store.
Nobody can say that they haven't had a brief thought of harming themselves or others, even if it is over a minor predicament. And that's gonna
Everybody
get us
has fucked up thoughts all day long, and it's gonna look crazy once we first get this shit in our heads, because the only thing keeping us most of the time from doing something is our empathy as humans, or our fucking default mode network that keeps us under control. If we're like that's why like schizophrenic people and people who damage their prefrontal cortex just impulsively do shit. That's why they call them crazy and shit, but it's really that the brain's just malfunctioning.
It's gonna be wild once we get Neuralink. I can't imagine the amount of stuff people are gonna go down for just because they had one off thought throughout their day. But
I guarantee even police officers and definitely government officials have weird ass thoughts all day.
Yeah, especially with the high stress that they go through every day. But it's like a lot of people will suppress that stuff, but it's like you need to feel it because it's human. It's human to have, depressive thoughts or, committal thoughts and stuff like that, but a lot of people just shove it deep down and then they'll just explode and go insane.
I'm ready to end this thing.
Okay.
Don't eat too many donuts.
Don't become a police officer if you have bad intentions.
And don't get naked in public. I found out the hard way.